Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to talk about what's going on with this whole trendy Aurora gang taking over apartment complexes that we were first told was a hoax. And it's a real concern for safety in your own home and for business owners, for landlords. It appears that there were gangs overtaking apartment complexes in Aurora. And a landlord recently shared a photo of one of his employees who had been beaten to a pulp, allegedly by one of these gang members who wanted to overtake the apartment complex.
Ashley, thank you. Also new here at 5, local men who are allegedly part of the notorious and violent Venezuelan gang that's been making national headlines, now behind bars.
And Aurora police are searching for 2 others. Fox 31's Matt Morrow here with the new information. Matt.
Well, Talia and Jeremy, take a look. Here they are. And new today, Aurora police tell us all 10 here are members of Tren de Aragua, or TDA, and they are now charged with dozens of violent crimes, including kidnapping, child abuse, and attempted murder. We now know some of the Venezuelan gang violence in Aurora started nearly a year ago. Here's a closer look at their mugshots. Again, police tell us all are documented members of TDA. Most of the men were arrested within the last few months. Some of the arrests go back to early this year. Again, the search is still on for 2 of them. Police would not tell us how many of the alleged gang members are in the U.S. illegally or have been turned over to ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, but we know for sure at least one suspect is in ICE custody. Aurora police also tell us some of the gang members are behind the violence at the few apartment complexes here that have become the center of a national and international headlines and a talking point, as you heard, for the Trump-Vance campaign. This includes the Fitzsimmons Place apartments off Nome Street and the Whispering Pines condos on 13th Avenue. And Aurora police also tell us many of the victims of the violence committed by these men are migrants themselves.
Says this is a picture of gang members breaking into a vacant apartment so they could move a Venezuelan family in and then collect rent. This is our business plan, one gang member told a housekeeper. If he, the property manager, doesn't like it, we'll fill him with bullets. The report authors called the gang's behavior brazen and further exhibits the suspected gang members' sense of comfort and control, consistent with their taking over the property and not fearing law enforcement or the property management. It was sent to Aurora officials on August 9th, with the investigators saying, the evidence we have reviewed indicates that gang members are engaging in flagrant trespass violations, assaults and battery, human trafficking, sexual abuse of minors, unlawful firearms possession, extortion, and other criminal activities, often targeting vulnerable Venezuelan and other immigrant populations. According to the law firm's report, the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua has threatened to kill, and in certain instances has apparently actively attempted to kill, members of Whispering Pines Management. The report says a consultant for the property management company was severely beaten and stomped by gang members and was hospitalized. The alleged incident recorded by building cameras with screenshots attached to the letter. The report relies on a property manager who said that gang members allegedly stabbed a Whispering Pines resident for refusing to pay rent to the gang. He also told the investigators the takeover began last November. The report recounts that this summer, the gang approached the property manager and told him they would help him out in exchange for half of all the rent that he collected. The law firm that wrote the report called that an organized crime tactic. The gang members then allegedly took over vacant apartments.
This is absolutely insane. I'm rendered speechless at hearing these stories and politicians being so blasé about it. The governor came out and said that it was a hoax and said it was a figment of our imagination. He called out the councilwoman and said that it was a figment of her imagination. Then, when presented with proof that this is happening, he apologized and said, well, you know, there have been some incidents that we're taking seriously, something to that effect. But they have no problem gaslighting people and telling them that they're imagining these things. The very people who have the bruises, the wounds to show for it. The very people who've been pushed out of their own apartment, they're being gaslit and told that this is an exaggeration by Trump. Absolutely insane. And I cannot believe this is happening. This is happening in America. They've flooded this country with millions of illegals, thousands upon thousands of whom are known criminals in their own countries. So they've flooded the country with criminals because these people were unvetted. Even Bill Clinton came out recently and said, while on the campaign trail for Kamala, came out and said that certain lives wouldn't have been lost. Laken Riley, for example. Her life wouldn't have been taken if these people coming into the country were vetted.
In Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. There wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
The fed-up landlord in Denver suburb has shared a bloody photo of one of its workers after the man was allegedly beaten to a pulp by members of the brutal Venezuelan prison gang for refusing to let them stay in a vacant apartment they had taken over. The Brooklyn-based company claimed that the gang effectively stole entire apartment complexes out from under it by threatening employees and tried to extort it for a cut of the rent in exchange for being allowed to keep operating the properties. Look at this. Due to open borders, due to a lack of vetting, due to a lack of control at our borders, flooding the country with God knows who, with all sorts. They're our problem now. All these countries are losing thousands of criminals because they're coming here. Local cops and the FBI were asked to help stop the extortion but refused to step in. Gangs have taken control of several of our properties in Aurora, Colorado, the company wrote in a thread on X last week, in an attempt to discredit this fact for political purposes and avoid governmental accountability. Some have spread false information about our situation because they don't want to take accountability. They don't want to be held responsible for what they have allowed, and they don't want it to ruin their chances politically. It doesn't reflect well on them. It doesn't reflect well on the Biden administration. It doesn't reflect well on Kamala, the border czar. It doesn't reflect well on her at all. No wonder she barely visited the border. So this company has multiple surveillance videos from its apartment complexes. They've included footage of the beating of an employee late last year that is said to prove that the gang has a foothold in Aurora. The firm said that as a result of the criminal behavior and threats, it has had no choice but to pull its workers back from its apartment complexes in a city of 390,000. Despite clear evidence, many still deny the reality of the situation, sometimes using us as scapegoats. That's why we are no longer staying silent, the company wrote. I'm glad they're exposing all of this because this is a matter of life and death. We will continue to counter falsehoods with simple facts and evidence. Yes, gangs did take control of our apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado, and the government did nothing. This is the real story. And I want to react to this exchange with J.D. Vance and a propagandist. They want you to be concerned about Trump and his rhetoric and the way he exaggerates and spins things. That's what they want you to be concerned about, as opposed to the fact that apartment complexes are being overtaken by gang members, that American citizens are being attacked, beaten up, having their property stolen. They want you to be more outraged about Trump and the way he expresses himself and the way he speaks sometimes.
Kamala has imported an army of illegal alien gang members and migrant criminals from the dungeons of the third world. She has had them resettled beautifully into your community to prey upon innocent American citizens. That's what they're doing. And no place is it more evident than right here. Because in Aurora, multiple apartment complexes have been taken over by the savage Venezuela prison gang known as Tren de Aragua.
President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
It's absolutely unbelievable that she would say that. A handful. Yes. And is that okay? We're supposed to be more outraged about how Trump says things than people losing their apartment complexes to Venezuelan gangs, losing them violently. This whole idea of fact-checking is an absolute joke. You're so intent on fact-checking the little details that you're ignoring the elephant in the room. Like the way they fact-checked the whole cats and dogs thing. They were so focused on that. And yes, Trump, during the debate, he was his usual self where he says things in a very expressive manner. But they want us to be more focused on that than the fact that they flooded a small town of 60,000 people with 20,000 migrants, illegal migrants. Why is that not being discussed?
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status. Right. Temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
I used to think it was just the big cities that were being affected, to be honest. The ones who call themselves sanctuary cities. I thought they were the only ones being affected to that degree. And then you're hearing about small towns being affected. And that lets people know that no matter where you are, it can be your town tomorrow. I'm so tired of these ridiculous questions that these propagandists come out with. I'm so tired of it. The same thing when it comes to women's rights. They'll talk about Roe v. Wade all day long, and they'll ignore the fact that women are facing more violence today as a result of reckless policies that are flooding the country with criminals and that they are allowing men into women's spaces. They're ignoring all of that, and they'll talk about Roe v. Wade, Roe v. Wade. Even though the people crying about it the most live in states that have abortion laws that are more relaxed than most countries in Europe. Our own gangs are bad enough, and now we have to worry about gangs from other countries that other countries are thankful to get rid of. So yeah, absolutely insane. It's really, really disturbing to see those images of that man with his injuries and to hear about people owning businesses that are being taken from them by force. And it has to stop. Enough is enough of this. Don't play with people's lives in order to play politics. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves. Like, comment and subscribe. And God willing, I will see you in the next video.